Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'd like to call the council meeting of Monday, January 6, 2025 to order, and I'm going to ask Councilor Durek to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Durek. Sue, will you please read the roll?
Hey, Fred?
Counselor Bagley,
Here.
Counselor Carbone,
Here.
Counselor Clancy, Counselor Durek,
Here.
Counselor Rhodes, Counselor Timbrow,
Here.
Counselor Zambrello,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Forrest,
Here.
Mayor Lesser.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everyone. And again, Happy New Year. We have two presentations tonight. First is a recognition of Kathy Bagley, which we'll talk about in a second. And secondly, we have a presentation from Zoom from the Department of Economic Community Development Director, Commissioner Dan O'Keefe. But let's first start with Kathy. And Kathy, if you can come up here, and I'm going to say a few words about you, and then give the counselors, if anyone wants to say a few words, and of course, if you'd like to say a few words. So, Kathy, 35 years of amazing work, and we are here to recognize that and honor you, and I'm going to read this recognition. After 35 years of dedicated service to Wethersfield Parks and Recreation, Department Director Kathy Bagley is retiring in January 2025. Since its inception in 1960, the Wethersfield Parks and Rec Department has had only two directors, William J. Pitkin and Kathy A. Bagley. For the past 35 years, Kathy has been responsible for overseeing town parks, pools, fields, facilities, including the William J. Pitkin Center, the Eleanor Buck Nature Center, the Solomon Wells House, along with various recreational, educational, and therapeutic programs. During her tenure, Kathy has overseen major renovation projects, including the conversion of the Moeller Home to the Eleanor Buck Wells Nature Center, Millwood Swimming Pond, J.C. Willard Pool, William J. Pitkin Community Center, and the Little League Costello Field. Kathy has been instrumental in developing the master plans for both Mill Woods and Cove Park. She has obtained grants to improve and expand facility offerings at the Cove Park Boat Launch and along the Heritage Way Bike Trail. Kathy has established partnerships with various organizations in town to develop and enhance park facilities and programs. Some of these successful partnerships include Mikey's Place Playground, Keeney State Park, Wethersfield Dog Park, Loretto's Stream Pavilion, and Keen on Kids. Kathy can always be seen at the numerous special events the town hosts, including Cornfest, Holidays on Main, Memorial Day Parade, the Dog Swim, fireworks, as well as coming out to support Arbor Day, the Keen and Mikey's Places. One of Kathy's greatest passions as director is working with the Wethersfield Teen Theater. And on Friday night at the retirement party, we had a great presentation of music from the Teen Theater. This program provides an opportunity for youth to learn about theater by taking responsibility for the business and creative aspects of running the theater company. In 2014, Kathy became Director of Parks and Rec and Social and Youth Senior Services. Additional responsibilities include overseeing programs and services for the elderly and persons with disabilities, food bank, special needs, camp funds, positive youth development, and crisis intervention. In the words of Vince Lombardi, the great Green Bay Packers coach, the price of success is hard work, dedication to the job at hand, and a determination to whether we win or lose, we have applied the best of ourselves to the task at hand. Anyone who knows Kathy knows that in her 35 years can attest to that. So on behalf of the entire Wethersfield community, we say thank you for 35 years of wonderful service to the town, and congratulations on your retirement. Before I open it up for Kathy to say a few words, was anybody on the council like to say anything? Fred.
I would.
Councilor Carbone.
Thank you. Hi, Kathy. I've only been on the council for a short bit of time, and it is was an honor and a privilege to get to work with you. You've been so kind and so patient with me, so thank you. You're always quick to answer any of my questions, and you did it with a smile, and you met me out, and we walked stuff, and I can't thank you enough for that. It really meant a lot to me, and I'm sad to see you go because I think you're a wonderful asset to our town, but now you can relax a little bit. But just thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Nicely said. Thank you, Councilor Carbone. Anybody else? Any other councilors? Deputy Mayor Forrest.
Thanks. Kathy, we've known each other for a long time. You came here when I was in Little League, and we were fixing the fields together. And I'll never forget that my father came down and had a large conversation, trying to get the fields all working for Little League. And that was the first sort of time that I heard the name Kathy Bagley, which is now 35 plus years ago. And I'm now graying, and you're still here, which is a testament to everything involved that we're talking about. So the best that I can say is thank you. The town thanks you. We hope that you got as much out of the relationships that you've developed here and the people of our town that we've given back to you as well. So it's going to be a tough thing to follow because if it's Pitkin Community Center and now is it the Bagley something or other? But when you have that kind of dedication for that long, then maybe that's exactly the type of thing that we should be thinking about for any person, including Kathy. That said, the next person that you hire now, you have to tell them that like minimum 30 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about here. But if it's a testament, I think, to the town and to you that this type of longevity has existed, and I wish you the best in retirement and with your family and the travels that you want to do and everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Forrest. Anyone else from the council like to make any remarks? Councilor Rhodes.
Hey, Kathy. I want to echo what everybody else said. Thank you so much for all you've done. I especially want to recognize that you were not just Parks and Rec, you were Parks and Rec and Human Services, two really important departments in town, caring for people, and a job much bigger than one person should need to do, and you did it well. And I just want to recognize that part of it as well, and you will be missed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rhodes. Any other councilor wish to make a comment at this time? So, Kathy, you've been amazing. You've been such a presence in town, and we so appreciate it. Would you like to say a few words?
I guess it's always to start with thank you. My career has been great. I've been doing really well with all these thank yous and goodbyes. Wethersfield's a great community. I don't think I would have stayed here this long if it weren't for the people that live here, the work that we did with them, and the staff that I worked with, both in my departments and with the town staff in general. When you started rattling off all the special events, I was like, boy, it didn't seem like that many when I was doing them. But working together as a team was always right at the top of the list here in Wethersfield. And I mentioned the other night that one of the things that always stood out working here is that all the town staff cared about people and really wanted to give them the best services we could possibly provide. And it was certainly a joint effort, and I think on a very much a collaborative effort with even people in the community that volunteer so much time to do a lot of what we do, because if you think about it, it's not just one person. I happen to be the director, but so many more people, both staff and residents, that all contributed everything to make all those things happen. So it really was also my pleasure to work here, to have a career here, have so many friends, and look at so many things that we've done over the years. And I'm happy to be retired, but there's so many projects coming down the road that I'm excited for what's going to happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Maybe one more round of applause.
For sure.
Thank you.
We so appreciate you. All the best.
Thanks.
Moving on to the next item.
And now I get to leave.
Yeah, you don't have to say that.
Oh, there's some fun. That's more ironic than you imagined.
Thank you, Kathy, and yes, feel free to leave. The next item on the agenda is we're going to have a presentation from Dan O'Keefe, the Commissioner of the State Department of Economic and Community Development. We're going to wait for the screen to come down, and it's a presentation of the state of Connecticut's economy. Commissioner, can you hear me?
I can. You guys hear me okay?
Well, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're just getting the screen ready for you so we can see it, the counselors and the public, and in about a minute, the floor is yours.
Great. Hey, can everyone see my screen once that's down?
Yeah,
It's up. I got it now.
and Dan, after your presentation, if you're willing to take a few questions, if there are any from the council, and then we should be good to go for that. So the presentation is now up. I don't know, the lighting should approve in a second.
That all sounds good. And Fred, I may need you to repeat questions to the extent they're distant from the microphone.
We can hear you well. The floor is yours, Commissioner.
Great. Sounds good. Well, good to see everyone, or kind of see everyone, given it's virtual. But what I thought I would do today is just give a bit of an overview and an update about what we're seeing in terms of the Connecticut economy, some of the opportunities, some of the risks, and then some of the things that we at the DECD are doing to try to support some of the trend lines that I will mention. So first, just talking about the backdrop, you can't build a home until you have a solid foundation upon which to build. And I'm pleased to see, in my view, we sort of finally have that solid foundation. After a decade where our economy or our fiscal position was described accurately as being in a permanent state of fiscal crisis, we used to have that boom and bust cycle where we'd spend all the money in the good years and then bemoan the bad years and cut programming, which is no way to manage anything, a household, a business, certainly not a state government. That is with the fiscal guardrails behind us. We've now had 6 years of consistent budget surpluses. Over that time frame, our system, if you will, has produced about $11 billion in surpluses, actually more than that. We've used that to pay down our unfunded pension liabilities by over $8 billion and to max out our rainy day fund, the fund meant to get us through the next recession, whenever that shows up, at its statutory cap of over $4 billion. So the backdrop is now one of stability and predictability, which means we can now start to think about ways we might forward invest in our economy. I think about what I just described, paying down our unfunded pension liabilities and maxing out our rainy day fund. To me, that was correcting or at least partially addressing the mistakes of our past. And now the next time we see those kinds of surpluses, and we will, our system is cyclical, which means cycles will cycle. It's a tight environment right now, but it will cycle again. I would love to see us start to talk about ways we'll forward invest as well. We continue to do the work of paying down those mistakes. Just looking at the economy for a moment, as I travel the state, I get a lot of skepticism. People saying, the economy's not doing well, saying population's not doing well, saying companies are leaving the state. That was all true 10 years ago. During what we now call the lost decade, the years from 2008 to 2018, that period post-global financial crisis, it really was bad. I mean, our economy got smaller. It declined on an inflation-adjusted basis. Only 3 states can claim that prize, by the way. Us, Wyoming, and Mississippi, with no offense to those 2 states, not exactly the economic company I seek to keep. But now coming out of the pandemic, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the effect the pandemic had on our economy, we've seen a pretty dramatic reacceleration in growth. So in the 2 years post-pandemic, we've had the 19th fastest growing economy in the country. In the 2 years prior to the pandemic, we had the 49th worst growing economy in the country. So an obvious question, how did a $300 billion economy go from dead last to 19th? And I would argue this changed. The ability to have more flexibility on where to live, and we're seeing that in the data. This is just commute distance post-pandemic. This is no surprise to anyone who's observed this anecdotally. When you don't have to organize where you live based solely or principally on a commute distance to some concrete and glass box somewhere, then you have, with afforded more flexibility, we're seeing more and more people choose to live in Connecticut with both their feet and their wallets. And I think this is why. When I moved my family to Connecticut in 2011, I'm a nerd, but I didn't study, the economic trajectory of Connecticut when I made that decision. I moved here because of all of these things. I moved here because I wanted an incredible place to raise my family, a place with an incredible healthcare system, a high quality of life, all the reasons we all know Connecticut is exceptional. And I think these things now matter more. This has become our comparative advantage when there's more fluidity in markets and where people choose to live. And we are seeing that in population data. So our population has gone up in each of the last 3 years. So every year post-pandemic, we're the only state in the region that can say that. We've added tens of thousands of new residents, while places like New York, this is cumulatively over the last 3 years, have lost over 600,000. New York's a massive place. They can handle that kind of a loss of population, but it just kind of gives you a sense of how we have been a net beneficiary of post-pandemic trends when many other states in the region have not. All right, so that's a little bit of the backdrop in terms of our economy and our fiscal picture. Now just talking about some of the programs that we're managing at the DECD to try to support those trends. The first is support for our small businesses. This is our Boost Fund. This is our small business lending program where we'll lend to small businesses in the state at a 4.5% fixed rate, so pretty attractive in the current rate environment. And the goal here is for 50% or greater to go to minority and women-owned businesses. And on the right, you can see we're well ahead of that goal, which we're proud of. And here's some of the impact quantified. One of the things I sometimes hear is, aren't companies starting or moving down to southern states? And by the way, places like Florida have been net beneficiaries as well of post-pandemic trends, but the jury's still out on whether that sustains. This is last year's data in terms of new startups, and I compared us not only to states in the region, but some of those other southern states that I often get asked about, and you can see we're comparing quite favorably. So again, the point I just want to keep emphasizing is that the pandemic was actually, I think, the economic shock to the system our economy needed, and those trends have continued quite constructively, even coming out of the pandemic now multiple years. Here's some of the programs where we're investing in the innovation ecosystem. Connecticut Innovations is our state's venture capital fund, one of the most successful state venture capital funds in the country, been around for over 30 years. We did establish an Office of Innovation within the DECD. This is investing in the ecosystem of innovation. I think of this as helping companies get ready for Connecticut Innovations. It's the pre-venture round company building is where the Office of Innovation is focused. And then Innovation Clusters, which is a $100 million program the governor announced last year, where we're investing in the application of next generation technologies. Think things like artificial intelligence and quantum as they relate and can have impact in our core industries, which for us, I'm sure you all know this, but some of those core industries are things like finance and insurance, so fintech and insurtech, things like advanced manufacturing, which really for us is supply chains in support of our national defense, and things like healthcare and biotech. We'll be shortly announcing the finalists of that particular program, but I can tell you we've had over 30 responses, so the response here has been quite strong. I mentioned manufacturing a minute ago as being a really important sector for the state of Connecticut. We do have the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. This is a fund supporting capital programs and the creation and investment in infrastructure for our manufacturing sector. And here's just some of the reasons why, and again, I think we all know this, Connecticut has such a special relationship or special industry in the manufacturing sector. You know, if you were to step back and in 2025, say where might I put the manufacturing sector, you wouldn't pick the Northeast. Forget about Connecticut. You know, the Northeast has high energy costs, a core input for the manufacturing sector. So why is this so important? Why is this 12.6% of our economy and growing? It's because we have this incredibly specialized workforce here. We know how to make things that are complicated, things like nuclear submarines, things like jet engines, things like military helicopters, things like photolithography machines. Some folks don't know this. Every single semiconductor in the world, and this is not hyperbole, this is fact. Every single semiconductor in the world is made on equipment made here in Connecticut. That's ASML based in Wilton, Connecticut, which is their North American headquarters. So now I'm just focusing a bit on that workforce. The chart on the left just shows job openings rate, where we were prior to the pandemic. The pandemic is obviously the spike, and then where we are now. You know, just to summarize this, what this says is we're doing okay. So, you know, our job openings rate is roughly where the rest of the U.S. is. But if you look at the data along the bottom, you know, there's still work to be done here. So while we're on par, if you look at the stats prior to the pandemic, this used to be at about 4%. Now we're at about 5%. So we're still elevated versus where we were prior to the pandemic. And while you never want this to be zero, any functional growing economy should have jobs available. we would like to see more and more of our workforce fill these jobs. This is still a real issue for us. We are, as an administration, investing $145 million into workforce to continue to try to plug this gap. And by the way, those positive integration trends also matter for this. Someone once said to me when I first took this job, you can't manufacture people. And I said, well, economically you can. It's called positive in-migration. And so we want to do both. We want to continue to retrain our workforce. We want to, for these jobs of the future, we want to continue to make Connecticut an attractive place for our graduates to stay. And we want to attract people into the state, to take someone to fulfill some of these jobs. On the concept of that, making sure we continue to protect what I really think is our comparative advantage, which is the vibrancy of our communities. This is why people want to come here, and this is why people want to stay here. These are some of the programs we're managing towards that end. The Community Investment Fund is an $875 million program. It's one of our biggest, where we're helping to improve the infrastructure in many of these communities, and including hopefully yours. Housing, this is not the DECD, this is the Department of Housing, but housing, we're putting over $800 million, or not over, we're putting $800 million into housing over 3 years. It's almost 3x our historical investments, so pretty significant. I'll show you the impact in a minute. And then brownfields, which is one of my favorite programs, because brownfields focuses on bringing down industrial sites, which are blight, and then recapturing that area for redevelopment, often on our waterfront, because many of these industrial sites needed access to water. So for me, brownfields is doing two things. It's bringing down blight and then helping bring up mixed use, more modern redevelopment. This is what's happened down with housing, and we still have a housing shortage here in Connecticut. That's, the good news is we have lots of people seeking to come here. The bad news is we got to build the homes for them to live in, and affordable homes for them to live in. If you took this graph back 15 years, we were always stuck at about 5K. We were always stuck at around 5K net new housing units per year. But that's still net new, so it was growing, but not growing fast enough. And if you look at the last 2 years, we've seen almost a 50% increase in the amount of net new housing. I think the reason for that is twofold. One is obviously the capital support that this administration is doing with that $800 million, but I also just think it's optimism. I think developers are starting to see Connecticut and how it's growing, and getting optimistic that the profit motive can help, create this new energy around housing. So that's kind of the presentation and the quick backdrop. I am happy to take any questions. There's lots more we could talk about, particularly as we get ready for a new session here with our legislature. The governor's State of the State speech will be on Wednesday. So he'll be talking about many of our priorities going into this next biennium. And again, I'm happy to take questions on any topic. If I know the answer, I'll share it with you. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was very informative. Appreciate your time and the presentation. I will open it up for counselors. Does any counselor have a question for the Commissioner tonight? Deputy Mayor Forrest.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe, for the presentation. It was extremely helpful, and it's encouraging, of course, some of the statistics, although we were joking here about, I was joking with the mayor about maybe investigating our ranking as the #1 in hiking state in the country. I'm sure Colorado is going to have a discussion with us about that, but nonetheless, I'm happy to be at the top of the list. More specifically for Wethersfield, I want to take this opportunity to be a little bit more hyper-local. I know that your purview is the entire state, but at least since we're here and we're having the conversation with Wethersfield and our delegation to sort of express to you some of our struggles and how they might match what you do in Connecticut, and if you could keep those in mind. Our forefathers built out this town for the most part, right, in the 1950s after the Second World War. We have a very, very large stock of entry-level housing. Of course, there is a diversity here of housing, but there's such a huge stock in that entry-level, mid-level housing. But when they did that, we have such a imbalance of residential compared to our commercial and industrial tax base. So I think it's almost about 90-10, but that's a generalization. So your efforts, when I was looking at your presentation and it talked about innovation clusters and tech startups and so on and so forth, I can't express enough how important it is to, if possible, direct those commercial and industrial dollars to specifically Wethersfield. There's a lot of housing that we have here, but it is so imperative, at least for our fiscal health. You talked about the state's fiscal health and how to have good balance and those types of things. We are working here in decades in order to create good fiscal balance here, and it's that imbalance in particular that is so detrimental and so burdensome on our fiscal health as we budget. So in your mind, as you're looking at opportunities, and I'm sure many other people are around, knowing that Wethersfield in particular, as a very unique, maybe not singularity, but a very unique aspect, has this imbalance in a way that most other towns don't. I was talking with counselors from Windsor who have had some beautiful new construction, whether it's the Amazon facility, which I'm sure you're aware about, and other great commercial and industrial growth. And they are talking about their tax bases being 50-50, which is phenomenal, right? That's a very healthy tax base. In Wethersfield, since we are significantly built out from a basic standpoint, but we're looking for more density in the commercial industrial sectors, an ability to transform, and some of that 90-10%, even down to 85-15 or 80-20, would be extremely helpful for our town as we try to manage our growth moving forward. So I just couldn't enough express that to you, because you're the one that gets to see it from a global perspective, but know that the effect locally is not going to be equal to all towns. In our town, that type of growth is going to go a long way. In Windsor, where they have a much more sustainable balance, it may just be another project, which I'm sure they would be happy to get, but won't necessarily have the same impact as the critical situation that we have here in Wethersfield. So I think that was on point, and I wanted to share that with you.
It was
Thank
a good
you.
sales pitch, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Well, it's
Commissioner.
also based in facts, too, and it's also based in the data, and I know that that's the kind of stuff that you're looking at.
Good feedback. Thank you. By the way, I would ask if you could just move closer to the mic if someone is speaking. This would be helpful. I caught that, but some of it was harder to
Didn't hear any of that. Can you repeat that?
Commissioner, I don't know if you had any reaction to that, and if not, we'll see if there are any other council comments or questions.
No, look, I think it's good feedback, and I one of the things that we do try as an administration is let our local municipalities do what's right locally. But it is a balance, right? And it is a balance as we see some of these local economies reinvent themselves. I mentioned how important manufacturing is to the state, but we shouldn't also forget the fact that a lot of manufacturing left the state as it left the entire, really North America. And many of our towns and municipalities are still reinventing their local economies. So I think managing these trade-offs over time, should be local, and understanding what those local dynamics is a big part of what I consider to be my job. I spend a lot of time traveling around the state, getting to know these microeconomies and trying to make sure in our own work we're balancing programs to make sure we're not just focused on one region or one type, cities versus more rural communities or what have you. We focus on being more broad-based than that for a reason.
Thank you. And the commissioner's been here, and we did talk a little bit about our town and the high points of Wethersfield. Does any other counselor have a question or comment for Commissioner O'Keefe? Councilor Rhodes.
Hi, Commissioner O'Keefe. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting and hopeful to see. One of my questions is, and I don't know that you have the answer to this or if you're a part of this, but the cost sharing with school districts, because that's another piece that the cost sharing formula is so inadequate for so many towns, and we do have amazing schools in Wethersfield and in Connecticut, but we're not going to be able to maintain that. It's a struggle to keep teachers. It's a struggle to keep everybody. We are constantly battling over the budget, as I'm sure you hear. So I'm curious to know if that is something that is being talked about with this surplus that we have, is how can communities be better supported in providing the education that they need for their kids?
Well, and by the way, to be clear, we don't have a surplus right now, or not a meaningful one. We are at a tight portion of the cycle, and I actually think this next budget negotiation is going to be very, very interesting because there's going to be a lot of pressure to reconsider the fiscal guardrails. And I can tell you, as someone who is very focused on our economy, I'm very supportive of those guardrails. They are a blunt instrument, but there's a fear, which I share, that if you make the instrument less blunt, the floodgates open and we go back to that boom and bust cycle I mentioned at the beginning. In terms of school districts and shared costs, that's not an area where the DECD has been involved with. So I'm not involved with that debate. What I can tell you is, the conversations we have had, because this is a unique quirk about Connecticut's history, is, we have counties but not county government. And, what that means is we essentially support 169 fire departments, police departments, school districts, et cetera, et cetera. And so that shared pool becomes a little less clear when you don't necessarily have a formal approach to multiple towns collaborating if they don't necessarily have the size to dictate those services on their own. If there's an equation that's out of whack, I'm unfamiliar with it, but I'm happy to give that feedback to those who are focused on it. Something tells me you already have, but I would be happy to do that. I'm just unfamiliar with the equation. I did tell you, I tell you if I don't know something, and that is a particular nuance I haven't been read into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rhodes. Any other council questions or comments? Seeing none at this time, Commissioner O'Keefe, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for that wonderful presentation on Connecticut's economy, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
All right, sounds good. Happy New Year, everyone, and thanks for all you do.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you. I hope you all found that interesting and informative. I thought it would be a good way to start the new year to get an update on Connecticut's economy from our commissioner. Moving on in our agenda, we do not have any hearings, so we are now at item D, which is public comment, and I'm looking for my notes. So I will read this to you as I do. During the public comment period, members of the public will have 5 minutes to speak on any issue. We have a lighted timer at the podium for each speaker to be aware of the time remaining for them to address the council. When you step onto the podium, please state your name and address. And at this point, the green light will go on, showing your 5 minutes has begun. The yellow light will come on when you have 1 minute left. And at this time, we ask you to begin to wrap up your comments. The red light will come when we've reached the 5 minute limit. After speaking, we ask you either to return to your seat or exit the council chamber so the next person may speak. If you do not have a seat in the chambers prior to speaking, please exit the chambers and continue to your previous seat or exit the building altogether. I do ask that you direct your comments to the entire council and refrain from speaking to one council person directly. And I ask that you all remain respectful. And as we start the new year, we really want to reinforce that kindness and respect. This section is for public comment, and the council will generally not engage in dialogue during this portion of the agenda. If any follow-up is needed, please leave your contact information with the town clerk, and the town manager will follow up with you. At this time, does anybody want to speak at public comment? Anyone? Bob, Mr. Woodward.
Did you want to go in front of me? Just a minute. Go ahead. Go ahead, then doesn't want to go up.
Go ahead. Or wait.
Serious.
You can go ahead. Your name and address for the record?
Claudia Longmore, 3 Schoolhouse Crossing. And I was wanting to get some more information on the Russell Road recycling project. If you could give me some more, even a specific location, if you're planning on building a facility, if so, the type of facility, if you've heard back from the state regarding the grant you requested. For a start.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. Again, normally we don't respond, but we're going to have the town manager get back to you.
Okay.
You can. Yeah,
She's on the email.
you did send us an email too, right, as well?
Yes, I
Yes.
did.
So we will get back to you quickly.
Okay.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I
No.
just thought that would probably bring up more questions, but just to start with, because we didn't have any idea of the project other than it was Russell Road.
Yep. Thank you. You and town manager, you will get back to her? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, you're up next.
Oh, good, that light is out, good. Good evening, my name is Bob Woodward. I live at 456 Middletown Avenue, and I've got two things. First of all, whomever comes to replace Kathy Bagley with Parks and Recreation, I hope they will be made well aware of everything that has surrounded Mill Woods Park, that they will realize that this is a park and not a sports complex, and they will realize the environmental sensitivity of the area. The Hartford Courant a week ago Sunday had an interesting article on the New Haven Green by a doctor who said this is important, it has trees, and they weren't suggesting synthetic turf fields, but maybe public restrooms at most. I hope someone will dialogue maybe with the people in the area and dialogue with the people in the town about the master plan before it goes into effect. They're going to be new, but this is important. If the New Haven Green is important to New Haven, Millwoods Park is important to Wethersfield. The other comment comes from something in the rare reminder I think before Christmas, from Mr. Moran, talking about putting in a swing school near Highcrest, number 1 spot, or one of the possible spots, which I presume the school owns and they can do. On Cassia Farm, I don't understand how they can even think of putting a swing school in there. I don't believe that's school property. It's been through so much controversy. Can we put sports things? Can we do this? Can we do that? No, we shouldn't. I don't understand how that even came up. And the other place was down by Hamner School. And I have to go back to what I've been saying, please get them on the agenda. They don't have to get on a full agenda, but at least on a dialoguing basis with Historic District. The school, the property that Hamner is left on was apparently left by the people who gave Standish Park. It was left for a school, but somewhere in there, and I was told by someone right about where France Street is, Standish Park starts. So the school around Hamner has the parking lot on one side, a small playground on the other, but then there's a park. And whatever happens down there has to go through Historic District. There's an overflowing agenda for Historic District next week. One on there is from the town, because they want to put a bench down there. And it may seem silly, but this is how the Historic District operates. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody will go ahead and they'll come and say, no, you can't do that. We want whatever comes out of Hamner to come out of Hamner clean. So if somebody could touch base with Historic District and at least get on a conversational basis, it might be helpful for Hamner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Further public comment? Anyone? Mr. Young.
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. Just before this meeting, I was in the meeting with the advisory school building committee. Several folks up here were attending that as well. And my comments tonight were that at the last meeting, they handed out a spreadsheet of different scenarios and prices, and I think $341 million is horrendous for coming back for a referendum. Remember, the failed referendum in 2023 was for $278 million. The normal procedure is, if it failed, you'd come back with a proposal less. Instead, as how much gall these people have, they come back with an extra $553 million more dollars, which is incredibly horrendous to come back on. And the fact that they're talking about breaking it up into 2 referendums instead of 1 is just another snow job for the taxpayer. And as far as transparency goes, just attending a meeting isn't transparent. It's a right. Transparency is putting all the details out there for the people to see. It's like our town manager and our superintendent, when they have their budget presentations, do they put out all the information? Heck no. They violate the greatest word called transparency. They don't even know what the word means. You get down into the nitty-gritty to show people what's going on. And I pointed out a number of things this past year about over costs and never got an answer. No change. Nothing. There's no transparency in this town. Now, $341 million is a tremendous amount of money for what these people want to do. And I would recommend shutting it down, because I think you're wasting your time. It will fail. And you know, there was an article in the Rare Reminder this week about this program, this project. And there was a number of things that were missing that they should have been talking about. I mean, they got the power and the ability to put in all their words. A person who sends a letter to the editor, he's limited. He's got to cut words out and paragraphs out. These people, the writer, should be putting in all that information. $331 million for whatever it was, $334 million for that project. That should have been mentioned. There was plenty of time, but we don't see that. And really, here's the clincher. It has been said that our schools are in horrible shape, deplorable shape. I continue to hear that. Yet, I have sat in town council meetings, budget hearings, and in this town, and saw where the superintendent of schools was getting money for redoing repairs. And what happened? Nothing. Was anything done? He got loads of cash. And then when Sally Katz took over the school operations, the care, the update, the improvements, things are not getting done either. I mean, I heard tonight at that meeting downstairs about air conditioning. The temperatures are up and down at different schools. Well, we have people that can go in and fix that. And why don't we have people going in there and fixing it? Because you're waiting for a referendum, which is going to fail anyway? Yet with the program, people, maybe our paid employees aren't doing their job, and maybe they should be replaced. And that would be a great recommendation to make to save money, because if these people aren't doing their work, the journeyman, the carpenter, the HVAC person, the electrician, if these people aren't doing their work, get rid of them. Get somebody in there who's going to do the job, and we won't be hearing these complaints anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
But I know you want to hear the complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you very much.
Any further public comment at this time? Robin?
Robin Barassa, 248 Dale Road. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New
So always with the new year, we always think it's a fresh start. We want to make positive changes, and I couldn't agree more. But I have to speak about this. I chose not to speak at the last meeting before the holidays because I realize this, people are sick of my voice and my face, and I get that. However, at that meeting, not one word was mentioned by anyone up here in regards to the referendum, which was won by 5-1. That was a significant communication by a lot of people in this town. And I sat out there and could not believe that no one up here mentioned anything about the referendum. I felt last year that the council in general wasted an enormous amount of time on stuff that wasn't truly beneficial. My opinion, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, between the flag policy and Millwoods. We were told several times in meetings, council meetings, that we must use the ARPA money and be under contract by December 31st. And then, because I don't fully understand how government works, somehow at the last meeting, it was that the money's being absorbed and we can use it for other stuff. I don't fully understand that, but I do know what was said at these town council meetings prior to that referendum. I'm positive. Many of you said we had to be under contract by December 31st, and then somehow or another, we didn't have to be. So I'm not really sure what's going on. So those are issues. I'm not sure where the lie or the truth begins, but I'd really like to make sure going forward that we are not going to be stuck in this mire again. We do have 2 referendum votes coming up. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Councilman Forrest, I couldn't agree with you more. We rarely agree on anything. I'm so glad you brought that up to James O'Keefe. Wethersfield is a great little town, and many of us grew up here, and many of us moved here for that very reason. And the burden on the taxpayer is very heavy, very heavy. And to waste a whole year on stuff that isn't adding anything really to this town financially or anyway is not okay. And although I can appreciate your sentiments, Mayor, to always remind us about being kind and nice, I think we all know about that. We spent a year, starting last year, of being called a lot of names online, in public, and in the news. None of us said that publicly to any of you. So I will take an oath to always be kind and nice and respectful. I don't agree with most of you up here, but I totally respect the time and effort that you guys do and take away from your families. But going forward, I think it works both ways. I think we can't forget what happened this past year, but I'd like to see us all move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Further public comment? Christine?
Christine Kelly Lasella, 37 Belmont Street. So I'm agreeing, this nice lady in the front here, oh, I'm not supposed to acknowledge her, I'm sorry. Communication is so important, and there's so many people, you guys, in this town, they don't have a clue as what's going on. I don't have a clue as what's going on with certain things. And so this recycling project, and I understand it's a bond or a grant, but people are curious, and there was 2 women, they're not here this evening, but I've seen them outside of here, and they don't even live near where you guys want to put that, but they heard about it, and I just think the communication factor needs to really, really be worked on. I read the town manager's report today, but I had to look for it, and I asked you guys this about a year ago. It's not on Facebook today. It's online. It's on the Wethersfield town page, but a lot of people don't know how to get to that. Like Facebook for people, they go to Wethersfield page, click. I'm not sure why it's not there. But I think it's important for people to be able to find it and find it easily. And again, maybe get someone to do public information. It's a new year, but I'm going to throw it out. It's not a dead horse to me. The Keisha Farm referendum of 2018, I have asked, and I'm still asking, and I'm asking very nicely, can someone please tell me why there is not an athletic field on that space? I understand it's in the works, but somehow or another, Millwoods trumped that and became the focus instead of something that took place 6 years ago. I mean, just somebody tell me, look out into this audience and tell these people why you pulled off it. I've spoken to the head of youth football and baseball and some people that were on Park and Rec Board back then that are no longer. There are mistruths going on. There are people that said, we'll get a field on Mill Woods, and that was wrong, because in 2018, you were supposed to put a field on Keisha Farm, and I would like to see it. I'm not saying it should be turf, artificial turf, because we can't afford it. So, but whatever it is, that referendum was intended, and if it's not going to be used for what it was intended for, then I suggest it should be sold. I just think it's wrong. We're having a referendum for the schools, I'm reading, in the late spring of this year. I'm not sure why we wouldn't do it in conjunction with the 2025 election. I think that would be a smarter fiscal thought. I FOI'd what this past referendum costs the town. But if you are doing it in the spring of 2025, I do want to bring it up. Is it going to be just at one location as you did for the Mill Woods referendum? Because I'm not sure why you did that, but I'm assuming you did it to save money. So if that's the case and you're not going to wait till the fall, I guess I'm just asking, are you following the same guidelines that you did for the Mill Woods referendum? I hear a lot, these are just all random notes I've been writing, you know, how we all, you know, the council and the town, we want people to come here, we want people to live here, we want people to be attracted to Wethersfield. We should take care of what we have. So that includes our buildings, it includes our fields, and do them all the right way. Take care of the people we have. I don't care about people that aren't here yet. I'm worried about these people. I'm worried about myself. I'm worried about our senior citizens. People do want to come to Wethersfield. I don't see a housing issue. When a house goes on the market, it sells. People want to move here. So I get we have to do our schools. There are things we have to do and we have to improve. But let's take care of the people that we have. And I don't care if you just moved here a year ago or if you've been here your whole life like me. There's a lot of people that have been here longer than me, and they deserve to be taken care of and have our taxes, you know, affordable. Because I've heard a lot of people say they can't afford it and they have to move, and that could be me one of these days, and I really don't want to move. And if I want my town to be like Glastonbury, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, I'll move there. I like Wethersfield. I like it the way it has been. I like it the way it was when I grew up here. Quickly, we need parking on Main Street. I'm still encouraging you, go to the Keeney Center. It says there's a sign on it. It's the visitor center. You can expand that parking lot. It would be way safer touching that firehouse parking lot. It's wrong to take away the garden. That opening of the firehouse is far too wide, far too dangerous, and what just happened in New Orleans should be a huge flashing light in our face. Do not put a huge parking lot behind that firehouse. Put it behind Keeney, then you can have an exit near Lucky Lou's. You can expand it by 30 or so parking spaces. You can't put a parking lot and have it dump out from the Charles onto Center Street.
Christine.
So I just think in a safety manner, you really, really come down there. I'll walk you and I'll explain to you why it's unsafe. I mean, I know you guys go to the Charles and he's a great guy. The parking lot needs to be at the visitor center, and we'll talk about that some other time.
Thank you, Christine. Further public comment? Anyone else? Rob?
Good evening and Happy New Year. Rob O'Connor,
Happy New Year,
180
Rob.
Main Street. Just wanted to say some comments on, I'm the co-founder and co-chair of Bike Walk Wethersfield, and we just wanted to throw our support to the work you're doing with the Silas Deane Highway, Silas Deane Boulevard corridor study. We're encouraging that study, and hopefully out of that study is going to come. I know the town manager had a thing in his notes, which I found easily in your report about rolling your eyes about plans, but I think that plan, even though there was a Silas Deane Highway plan, the study that can be done from Rocky Hill through Wethersfield, I think really presents an opportunity that we haven't had before. I think there's momentum there for a safer, more pedestrian-friendly, car-friendly, and most importantly, economic driver on the Silas Deane Highway that we really don't take full advantage of right now. It's, by lowering speeds and making it safer, I think we'd have a better chance at taking advantage of the economic opportunities there. So we're very supportive of that, and including the plan to have a possible trail along the railway that would have pedestrians and cyclists have a safe way to take advantage of all the stores. I think Derek has done a great job with a pre-plan, and I know we've spoken to the state DOT, so we're very hopeful that that work continues. I was going to make some spontaneous comments because I was the chairman of the Board of Education for South Windsor during the biggest failed referendum that the town had, and as soon as that we learned our lessons in that town, came back, and they have 4 brand new elementary schools right now. It's a very similar situation that we are here, and I can't speak to what the right way to do referendums is. I know that they did, I think, 3 referendums, and they were done in the winter, and there is a strategy to getting referendums passed. One of them is not having people throw numbers out of their hat before the actual plan is out. So I'd caution everybody to wait to see what is presented by the hard work that's getting done. Speaking of hard work, I want to thank everybody on the council, because I don't think that's done enough to thank you guys for your, not you, Fred, you're getting paid, but everybody else. No, I would like to thank you for some of your comments about the meetings. I usually don't just spontaneously come to meetings, but I've seen some of the dialogue at the meetings, and sometimes it's frustrating to sit at home and have people say things that can't be rebutted, and sometimes those things become fact, and they're not fact. Which led me to one of my favorite quotes. I'm going to read it and take my last whatever time I have here. Theodore Roosevelt had a quote in 1910, and it was commonly became known as the man in the arena passage.
Yeah, that's my guy.
And Theodore Roosevelt said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man or woman who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows what great enthusiasms, the great devotions, he and her who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end that triumph of high achievement, and at the worst, if he fails, at least they fail, daring greatly, so that his or her place shall never be with those of cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." And it's just a thing. I mean, as a person who's jumped on committees and actually spend time doing the work, I encourage everybody who has comments and their ideas, like, put it up and get onto a committee. And maybe just not come to town council meetings and tell about all these stories. Like, there's actually action and work to be done. I know the committees need people. Bike Walk Wethersfield encourages people who want to get into parking and traffic and pedestrian safety. We're always looking for new members, and we have some really positive things coming. The new bike trail. We're going to have things that are going to change the town and visible. So, and we'd like to thank the council for all those kind of things too. The grants that you guys have gotten for us to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none, we will move on in our agenda to council reports. At this time, does any councilor have a report to give this evening? Councilor Zambrello.
Thank you, Mayor. And everybody, please bear with me. I've got a migraine, and I'm doing my best. So if I'm not as coherent as usual, that's why. So obviously, I'm going to talk about the school building committee. There's a few things from comments tonight I'd like to respond to, and also one of the things that was mentioned by Mr. Woodward in his comments were about this question of the swing schools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the sites that they're considering and the pros and cons of those, because we do want to get feedback from folks. If you have a favorite of the sites, if one of them is going to be a deal breaker for you, and I'll explain a little bit more about what a swing school is for those who might not know that part. So let's see. So the first thing was, and I'm going to talk more about this in a future meeting, but just a quick note about the funding. The number that you see for the total project cost that's not what the town actually ends up paying. The state reimburses us a certain percentage. So we end up in Wethersfield, we can get up to about 57% reimbursement. So we still have to put the full amount up for a vote because ultimately we're still responsible for it. But then at the same time, we're applying to the state for that reimbursement. So they ended up giving us back a huge portion of that money, and the rest of it is paid back over about a 20-year period is typical. So I don't want anyone to be alarmed by initial numbers. Also, as Rob mentioned, none of this is final yet. So we've gotten some initial estimates from the last meeting, a little bit more detail tonight, but I don't want to put out numbers there without knowing that that's going to be the recommendation. So they're still working very hard on that, narrowing in on the options. But just be aware the state does reimburse us a significant amount, and you're going to get a lot more information about what that means and what those numbers are as we get further into this process. The next thing was just a note on the referendum timing. I know there was a question of why not do it in November, and there's a number of reasons why to do it or to not do it. One reason to do it in June is that the due date for the grant application is June 30th of every year. So that means if we apply in June, we get it approved in June, we end up on the legislature's agenda for the following session, as opposed to potentially having to wait another year to get that approved. So next, a little bit about the 3 swing sites. So there are 3 sites that the committee and the consultants have determined are viable. There are varying opinions on which one is the best, which one might not be the best, but they're looking for feedback, and there will be opportunities for feedback. I'm not sure in what form exactly yet, but let me just briefly go through those and a couple of the pros and cons there. So the first one is the one that was recommended during the last referendum, what's being called Highcrest North. So it's essentially the opposite corner of where Highcrest is now. It's next to the Keisha Barn. One of the pros of that is that it's less in the wetlands than the current site. It's a little bit easier to access. And there's also an opportunity for a new Highcrest building. And one of the things we know about our current building is that it's very, very outdated. It's got this pod structure that's just not really functional for kids in our modern environment. So we absolutely can renovate it, but it's nice to have that opportunity for a new Highcrest. Cons would be we wouldn't be able to entirely replace the fields on that site because the site for the existing school isn't quite as large as the site for where the new school would be. And traffic at this site would probably be the most difficult to handle of the 3 sites because everybody would be funneling onto the same street and going towards the center of town since it's in a corner of the town. So that would be a challenge. The other site, the second site, I should say, is on Keisha, as you've heard, right across the street. The pros are that we could gain fields doing that, and traffic is still not ideal, but it's improved. They can be rerouted onto Collier for buses, so that's an improvement. It also is, the school wouldn't be right on the street, it'd be set back a bit, so it would end up dominating the site from what they were telling us. Because so much of the rest of the site is wooded and wetlands, there wouldn't be much else you could do with it besides a couple of fields and a school. The other issue is that there's no existing infrastructure. So all of that would need to be created as well. Sewage, parking, everything, water, everything else that goes into creating a site like that. So they're getting more details on these sort of proposals so that we can see exactly what that looks like. And then the last one is next to where Hanmer is currently. So it would sit on what is the Stillman part of that property behind the Stillman building where the Board of Ed is located. It would not touch the Standish part of it, which has Mikey's Place and Laura's Garden. And then potentially down the road, once we knock down the old Hanmer, it would be then able to replace that space with green and replace the fields that were lost. So that's a nice opportunity. It's a good chance to actually improve the traffic flow of that site because it would have more road access in the end. And it would have more students, but it would be a smaller footprint. So it would actually fit on that site pretty nicely, and I think it has the potential to look pretty good in the end. But again, the downside there is that it would require the reconfiguration of that park. So it could be a good result in the end, but really want to hear people's opinions on this. And the other note, I should have started with this, what a swing school actually is this would be the first school that gets built. and it would be the new school for that property. So that gets built first, and then as each school is renovated or built new, those kids cycle into this school so that nobody has to be living or working or learning in a construction zone. And then at the end of the process, the old school on that swing site would be knocked down, and you just have this one school there. So it's very important logistically for this plan to be successful that we have a swing school to allow us to cycle those kids in and out and keep everybody safe as possible, and also keep the project moving as quickly as possible. And I think I'm missing something, but no, that's pretty much it. I want to throw those 3 sites out there. No decisions have been made on that, and again, there will be opportunity for more input, but please think about it. I know we heard some thoughts from Mr. Woodward tonight, but if anybody else has a site they'd prefer or that they think is a deal breaker, please tell us. It's going to be really important to know from you all what you think the most viable option is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambrello. Appreciate the detail and thoroughness of the report, and I hope you feel better. Further council reports? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll go into council comments. Does any councilor have a comment tonight? Seeing none, I have a few, but I want to start with, and I was going to do this at the beginning of the meeting, but we had Kathy Bagley's retirement celebration, and we had the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development. But I'm going to ask for 2 quickly separate moments of silence. First, for the terrible, horrific act in New Orleans where 15 people were killed in a terrorist act. And I just ask that we think of them, send our condolences to the families, and we take a moment of silence for the people who lost their lives in New Orleans. Thank you. The second moment of silence is last week. The 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, passed away, and he lived the longest post-presidency. As you all know, he lived to 100, and in a lot of ways was a model citizen. If you read about him, I'm not going to do all that, but I am going to, in my lousy handwriting, I wrote this down, read a quote. Rob, you read a quote from a president, Ted Roosevelt, and before I ask for this moment of silence, I'm going to read this quote from President Carter. I have one life to live and one chance to make it count. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, whenever I can, wherever I can, in whatever way I can to make a difference in this world. I ask for a moment of silence for President Carter. Thank you. I have 2 other items, both fun items. I think the first one Councilor Bailey will appreciate because he asked me about it and he's been to many of them, but we're bringing back the Wethersfield Mayor's Ball, which will be February 14th, Valentine's Day. Don't need to bring a date, but it is Valentine's Day. It's a Friday at Keeney. And the purpose of the ball, so the history is we've done 7 mayor's balls in the past, and we raised $139,000, all of it donated to Wethersfield, social and youth services and preschools in the past. This year we have 2 charities. One is the food bank, which we've done in the past, and the second one I want to highlight again. I've talked to you about it before, but the Mayor's Ball will be raising money for the Veterans Traveling Tribute Wall. So this is coming to Wethersfield. It's going to be great for our town from September 10th to September 14th, 5 days, and it is the replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It is the size of a football field. It will be at the Cove, and accompanying that wall will be 72, that's right, 72 other smaller commemorative walls honoring our veterans from conflicts from World War I all the way through Afghanistan and including September 11th. So we will have a lot of activities around those 5 days, including an opening and closing ceremony, all the stuff we are working on now. But this Mayor's Ball on February 14th, I hope some of you will come, counselors and audience, will be to help raise money to bring that wall, those commemorative walls here. So February 14th, Wethersfield Mayor's Charity Ball for the food bank and for the commemorative walls. The last item, and I'm going to take a couple minutes, this is a fun thing. We don't have a lot on our agenda tonight. Hopefully we'll be getting home soon and getting out. But I want to show the audience this, and I'm going to stand up and I want to explain it, what this is. And I'm actually going to read something, but let me show you the box. This came to me. There are 4 sides to this box. On one side is Japanese lettering, which I'll explain in a second. Obviously, our mascot, the red onion, and the mascot of Nagayo, which is our sister city, which we've had a relationship in Japan for 28 years. So we've been working on trying to develop a more robust cultural and potentially economic relationship with our sister city. So they sent me this box. I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to read a little bit. It won't take that long, but it's important and it's interesting. This was sent to me. I'll read it to you. It is sent to me by, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly probably, Shinichi Yoshida, the mayor of Nagayo, Japan. Dear Ken Lesser, mayor of the town of Wethersfield, Happy New Year from the town of Nagayo. The year 2025 marks the 28th year that the Nagayo town and the Wethersfield town entered into a sister city relationship. Up till now, Wethersfield and Nagayo have exchanged various cultural and educational aspects. 2024 saw a new step in this exchange between a high school in Japan and there, I can't even pronounce it, Okanji High School and Wethersfield High School. Friendly exchanges between our sister cities have been wonderful for us, and we look forward to continuing to strengthen them in the future. We have sent this gift to your town. We have arranged, this gift is the Japanese tradition of omekuchi, or Japanese fortunes, and this okamuchi box that has our 2 mascots and the origami cranes. You know what? I think that will, just hold it there for a minute. The box was created by students in the junior high school here under the guidance of an English teacher, Mr. Benjamin Brimlow, who's from Connecticut, is accompanied by an explanatory note from Mr. Brimlow as well. You won't be able to see this, but there's a picture of the kids in the middle school making these fortunes, and I'll explain the fortunes in a second. So in the box are envelopes. There's 200 envelopes in the box, and they represent fortunes. This calligraphy, this writing, stands for is sacred lots, but it really means fortunes. And inside there are envelopes with little fortunes in them. On one side is in Japanese, and on the fortune, and one side is in English. And this is going to go to the schools, and we are going to try to reciprocate a project. But we're not going to bring it around to everyone in the public, but everybody up here, if anybody wants one, you can get one after before it goes to school. You don't have to read it, you're just going to take one. You're going to get a fortune. I think they're all good. If they're not, I'm sorry, I didn't write them, I didn't make them, I didn't open them. I have no idea, although they tell me they're positive. You don't have to open them now, you can. I'm not going to take time to read it.
Gonna do it?
We are working on developing, and we have been, furthering our educational, cultural, and economic exchange with them. It's an initiative of ours.
Perfect.
Although they're doing more than we are. Look what they did.
Yeah, you have a nice one. Yeah.
I'm going to hold one up, shall we, so they can see? Yeah.
I think they're supposed to be cranes if you
Yeah.
open them up, right?
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
open them up to be cranes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I don't know, we're willing to reciprocate. I don't know the exact way we are. I talked to the chair of the board, and they're coming up with a way this is going to go to the schools, and they're going to the high school. We already have a relationship with one of the teachers who's, I don't know if an expert, but understands Japanese culture and is willing to do a project. So I wanted to share that with everyone. It's exciting.
Thanks, Mayor.
And kind of a fun project, and we thank the city of Nagayo, our sister city, and we are working on building that relationship more deeply. So with that, I see some of you opening and reading.
Thank you.
You like it?
No.
You don't. So listen.
There is a rule. There is a rule, actually.
There is a rule.
It gets better?
No, this is
You can put it back. You're actually allowed to put it back and take a different one.
No, that's okay.
You are allowed to. It's in the, they sent
Oh, it's in the rule book
two
now.
pages of rules that you
If
are
you don't
allowed.
like it, you can
Did
give
it get much better? I couldn't
Maybe
get
it'll be
past the
worse.
first sentence. Yeah, no, I don't want it.
Do you want to take another one?
Don't take this one.
Throw it way down there.
All right. What if a kid gets that one? Should I take it for the team?
That's okay. They're allowed, it said in the rule, they sent me like 2 or 3 pages of rules.
It's so stressful, Ken.
Yeah. I didn't know you'd be all over them now. If you don't like it again, Shelley, we'll give you another, I guess in golf they call them mulligans. We'll give you another one.
Yeah.
Moving on. Does anybody else have any
If the
council
referendum's going
comments?
It's a little shorter, but much better, thank you.
Much better. I'm so happy to hear that. You deserve good fortune. All of you out there, Happy New Year, deserve good fortune. All of us up here deserve good fortune. Moving on, I'm going to ask the town manager for the town manager's report.
And his fortune.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to read my fortune. No, I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you, everyone on the council, for this challenging year, I'll say, but I
Why do you
really
look
look
at me when
forward.
you say that?
I was looking down, so it wasn't.
I was looking at me.
My fortune said to look right at you when I said this. No, I'm kidding. No, but thank you all. I think we've got an exciting year ahead of us. I've mentioned a lot of it in the report, but I think it's going to be a good year. So I look forward to it, and thank you.
Does that conclude your report, Mr. Town Manager? Yes, thank you. Town clerk's report, Sue?
The town clerk's office has just been getting ready for 2025. We're preparing by changing out our indexes of the various records. We're getting ready for the different things, referendums and things that are coming forward this year.
Thank you, Sue. Moving on, we do not have any bids. The consent agenda, do I have a motion? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Did I miss something?
Oh, there is a
Have a
bid.
bid.
Oh, we do have a bid. I'm looking at the wrong agenda. So do I have a motion on the bid? Thank you. Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the town manager to award a contract for the Celestine Highway Corridor Study, also known as State Route 99, to CDM Smith Incorporated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Zambrello. Mr. Town Manager, any discussion or a description?
Just quickly, we had a number of proposals for this project. The staff, along with staff from Rocky Hill, interviewed the 3 top proposers, and out of those, they have selected CDM Smith as the best option for this project. So I recommend the approval.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions from councilors? Councilor Carbone,
ahead.
and I have
You had-
Councilor Zambrello too. Councilor Carbone.
Thank you. So it mentions that the study will be administered by Wethersfield staff. Who will be doing the study?
CDM Smith will be doing the study. Our staff is, we were the grant recipient. It was the 2 towns together put in for the grant, but only one can receive the funds, so we have to administer it for that purpose. So we will be the project managers for it, but CDM Smith will be the consultant that is actually conducting the project.
So the wording is just a little weird in there. And of course, everybody's looking at this saying, well, of course they picked the most expensive one. And why? Because we've worked with Colliers before. Is there a reason?
There's a very, well, this is, there was a number of criteria that were set up by the panel and what they were going to be reviewing, but it's really about experience in this specific type of project and the number of similar projects that the firms had done in this area. And CDM Smith was far and away had the most experience in this area, and they just felt they were the best option.
Perfect. And do you have a time frame at all for this?
We're going to start right away, and I believe it's probably going to be somewhere on the order of 6 to 8 months for the heavy lifting. There'll be public meetings as well, where people have an opportunity to weigh in on it. But over the next 8 months or so, they'll be putting together a proposal on how we can move forward with the Silas Deane Highway. And then from there, the goal is this is a Safe Streets for All grant, so it's a federal grant. And it's a requirement to do this type of planning work first before you can apply for the construction money. But our goal is to roll right into the construction proposals for that because there's still a lot of money in the infrastructure grant programs that this will make us eligible for by completing this project.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carbone. Councilor Zambrello.
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, passes unanimously. I think we're on the consent agenda next. May I have a motion? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Rhodes. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes. Moving on to, hope I get this right, there's no unfinished business. New business, do I have a motion? M1. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. This is a motion to approve the appointment of the Charter Revision Commission members. I move to approve the appointment of Steve Berry, 124 Black Birch Road, to the Charter Revision Committee, his term beginning 1/6/2025 until completed. Cindy Clancy, 56 Broad Street, beginning 1/6/2025 until completed. Christine Fortunato, 28 Fairmont Street, to the Charter Revision Commission, beginning 1/6/25 until completed. George Kelly, 56 Pickering Lane, for the term beginning 1/6/25 until completed. Joe Ciarcia, 14 Swing Lane, term beginning 1/6/25 until completed. Stephen Kirsch, 65 Bailey's Lane, term beginning 1/6/25 until completed. Richard Roberts, 15 Lantern Lane, term beginning 1/6/25 until completed. And to set an organizational meeting of the Charter Revision Commission for January 15th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Town Manager's Conference Room at 505 South Deane Highway here in our town, Wethersfield, Connecticut.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Councilor Dirk. Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, want a little bit of a description of the timeline and maybe the charge
Sure.
of the commission?
So per the charter, the town charter is to be reviewed and amended as necessary every 10 years. That is 2025 is when it is due, and that would take place, it has to go to referendum, so that would take place if there are any changes. So that would take place in November as part of that referendum, part of that voting period. So that's a pretty tight timeline. What we're looking at, the reason why we're having you set the organizational meeting now is because also for state law, no work can begin with this commission, no substantive work of this commission can take place until they've had an organizational meeting and a public hearing. So we want to get the organizational meeting done as quickly as possible so that they can then schedule their public hearing, which if you look in your packet, we have some recommended dates or some basic dates that the way this will flow forth. But that public hearing will take place early in February. We're suggesting around February 5th. The first working meeting of the commission would take place shortly thereafter in February. And then we're proposing 2 working meetings in March and 2 in April. There needs to be a second public hearing as well, held by this commission to talk about any proposed changes they might be considering. And then the commission, we're proposing that they have a draft submitted to the council sometime in May so that they can then, the council has time to consider it because the council also has to have a public hearing on any changes. And then if they're not satisfied with the recommendation of the commission, then they can say, we want you to look at this again, look at that again. They go back and then come back to you. All that being said, there's a lot of back and forth there with a few meetings in July and August, so that's why we laid out a pretty aggressive schedule here. Generally speaking, and I think the last time, 10 years ago, there weren't that many changes, but it's up to the commission to really make the recommendations back to you all. So that's the timeline. It is aggressive. It is a lot of meetings in a short time period, but at the same time, it's also very contained in people that have stepped forward to be part of this commission have a very short time that they can just focus and get this done. So with that, staff will be reviewing it. Each department is going to review the charter and provide recommendations for changes. I can tell you that there are some, the way the charter reads some of the departments, they're no longer structured quite that way. They've changed many years ago. So we would just want to make those administrative changes, just the way, like the names of the departments and who heads what and that kind of thing. Those are all pretty minor.
Does those go to referendum? Sorry to interrupt, right when you said that. If it's like a language change or a name change, does that?
It's really up to the attorneys at this point, and the attorneys will be part of this, but in fact, we have a few attorneys on the commission. But generally speaking, it's what is considered a major change. If it's just a language change, it wouldn't, but if it's a substantive change, I believe something like that would need to go to referendum.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions or comments regarding this item on the creation of the Charter Revision Commission? Let me make a comment or two. First, the people that are being appointed here, all of them, all 7, are excellent. They are well-known, well-respected Wethersfield residents who have been involved in a lot of things in town, and they've signed up for a really important job. So I thank all of them. I don't think any of them are here tonight, but I thank all of them for their willingness to serve on this commission. And just, the town manager mentioned some of the things that come up, just for the public knowledge too. A lot of times things come up that are very political in nature when towns do this. For example, sometimes things like, should we have staggered terms for councilors? Should we separately elect the mayor? Some towns do that, sometimes don't. So those are types of things, along with language changes and recommend other, that often come up, and generally the group will discuss and debate that, hold those types of things, hold public meetings, and then make recommendations, and then it's up to us to set a referendum on that. Tonight, what we're doing is appointing the commission members so they can start the work of the charter, of reviewing and potentially revising the Wethersfield Town Charter. Any questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor say, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. Get back to my agenda. I don't think there's much else other than we do not have any other ordinance for introduction. The last item on the agenda before we adjourn is we go back to public comment. Does anybody from the public want to speak? Again, you have 5 minutes. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but anybody from the public want to address us again, please? Nobody? Yep. Claudia, please, if you're going to come up, please, again, apologize, but you have to do it for the record. Your name and address.
Claudia Longmore at 3 Schoolhouse Crossing. The next meeting is on the 3rd Monday, correct?
So I was going to mention that before we adjourn. We're going to do Tuesday when there's a federal holiday, and it happens to be Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. We move it every year, so it'll be Tuesday the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment. Mr. Young.
Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. It was mentioned tonight about the schools and the different locations and about the cost. The idea of talking about the state reimbursement is something we really shouldn't care about, is a misnomer. We all pay, if we work, or if we have money coming in, we're all paying state taxes. We should be very concerned about we should be concerned about the reimbursement section of doing any schools or that kind of thing, because we all pay taxes. We've been paying taxes for years and years. And to say that the state reimbursement, we shouldn't even pay attention to it, we should just pay attention to what the town of Wethersfield is going to really pay, that's wrong. You got to look at the whole thing. If it's $331 million, it's because we all pay state taxes and the reimbursement is coming from the state. Why would we disconcern ourselves with the state reimbursement piece? We pay. Highcrest School, renovating, putting in a brand new school on what you call High Crest North is 250 feet from South Highland Street to the west, to the wetlands. That's where you're talking about the last referendum that failed. That's where they wanted to put a new school, just south of Highland Street. And of course, you're looking across the field, and there's the wetlands. That's 250 feet. I got it here on the map, the town map. There's been a suggestion putting it Keisha Farm North, or whatever you want to call it. Keisha Farm, on the Keisha Farm field. And that's close to the road. And the picture that I saw tonight showed a lot of green out there in the field, which I could not understand because there's no green on this map, okay? If that was green, it was indicating wetlands downstairs in that meeting. This map doesn't show it. And if it really is wetlands, it was a lot of wetlands. And why did we pay $75,000 an acre for all those wetlands when you bought and voted for Keisha Farm? That's a disgrace. Wetlands is only worth a couple $1,000s, and you paid $75,000. There was 5 or 6 acres that is established wetlands. But what was shown tonight downstairs was wetlands coming across the field, and it was getting very close to where this new school could be proposed. Doesn't sound right. I will look at the map tomorrow. But the fact is, if that's wetlands and we paid $75,000 an acre for more, I thought we paid $75,000 for about 5 acres. 75,000 times 5. It looks like there could be probably 75,000 times 8 by looking at that green. Shows how smart our people are when we went out and, when you went out and bought it. Next, I also looked at the map showing the corner, the west side of Keisha Farm, south of Highland Street. You got the barn right up on the knoll, okay? From that corner to the wetlands is over 600 feet. As you go back behind the barn, from the west corner of Keisha, and there's homes right behind it, that's 529 feet to put a school in there. Why wasn't that considered? And then as you go back at least 1,000 feet south of Highland Street, from that border to the wetlands.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Please wrap up your comments. Thank you.
442 feet. Where? How come our what do you call those people? Consultants?
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Where were they? Did they miss it? Huh?
Thank you, Mr. Young.
What a bunch.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
What a
Any
bunch.
further public comment before we wrap up tonight? Yes, Christine.
I'm going to not look at that thing because it makes me talk faster. Christine Kelly Lasella, 37 Belmont Street. So to kind of finish up what I was saying before, and I start talking fast and I get really amped up about it, putting a parking lot behind the Wethersfield Company One Firehouse is not a safe, it's not a smart idea. Never mind taking out a chunk of the community garden. That is part of our history. It's open space, and it's a contradiction if you all say, well, we'll just take up half of it. And there's people that live there that probably don't want a parking lot in their backyard. But let's forget about that, because I'm all about what's right, but I'm also about what's safe. The opening of the firehouse driveway is extremely wide. On a daily basis, I've shared with you, I watch people coming in, trying to come out. You see a fire truck trying to come out of that bay, And I've seen a lot of and people almost getting hit, and it's dangerous. The conversation to open that parking lot into the Charles parking lot where people could empty out onto Center Street during events, that is not safe. Center Street has to be blocked at Woodland and Center with a dump truck. That's much further down the road. You cannot have any sort of traffic that close to Main Street. After what happened in New Orleans, I think we really, really have to take a hard look at that. We don't need a huge parking lot in Old Wethersfield. We need 40 more spaces behind the Keeney. I look at that parking lot every day, and there's always room over there. And we could have already done that, frankly. And I know people think, oh, no, we need this. No, we don't. We don't. I'm tired of Main Street being, well, we have to build it up. Focus on Silas Highway and the Berlin Turnpike. And let's focus on safety. As far as the elementary schools, Ms. Umbrello, thank you for the information. It's starting to feel like Keisha Farm was bought to put a school on. I'm not saying anybody's lying, but it's like we went from, look, the 2018 referendum. For recreational open space and other municipal purposes, I get a school is that, but if what Ms. Umbrello said is true and a good chunk of that land would be used for the school, then we basically paid $2.6 million for that land to put the school on. I don't think putting a swing school down at Hamner School is a good idea at all. There's a 70-year-old baseball field that sits there. There are neighbors that live on either side of the park, and my kids went to school there, so I don't see how they could actually squeeze the school in behind Stillman. And maybe there's a plan that I'm just not visualizing it, but I think that space is far too small. I had a conversation with my daughter, who is a junior in college, and I did share this on Facebook. I asked her what her thought was about, and she went to preschool in town and all the way up to, she graduated in 2022. And she said, I said, what do you think about a kindergarten through fourth, a fifth and sixth, seventh and eighth in high school? And her exact words were, that seems a little excessive, Mom. And middle school, I won't say the word, but isn't great to begin with. Going to an elementary school where we start in kindergarten and we hit fifth grade, we're kind of like the big dogs of the school, and they give us leadership responsibilities. They start in sixth grade. She spent her time, instead of going out to recess, she went and read to the kindergarten classes. They had hall monitors. They had kids that were the leaders of recycling programs. So her feeling was, you take that away from kids and you just put fifth and sixth graders together. Again, maybe it works in some towns, but what Wethersfield has had has worked. I don't think it's broken, and if a group of people that are my age or a little younger are thinking it's a great idea, maybe talk to some of the kids that have recently graduated from Wethersfield. Talk to, Ken, you have a daughter, I'm not supposed to address you, who's in college. So
think of the same school.
Yeah, go Marist. So I just think that I didn't agree with it. I think K through 6, don't fix it if it's not broken. We're not Cromwell, we're not Glastonbury, we're not any other town. I don't know about putting a school over at Highcrest North. I think those neighbors are going to go bonkers. But just hearing that, you're asking people to come up with ideas. So maybe some of us will go home in the next week or so and think about maybe where there is somewhere. I agree we need to do something with our schools, but, talk to some of the recent graduates and the people that have been through our school systems recently. And it's not all just up to all of us, because we've been out of school a long time, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Any further public comment tonight? Any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Nobody?
You had trouble adjourning.
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.